He put me down more times than not, calling me lazy, fat, a slob, and worthless. I began to believe these things.
He cut me down day after day. The words hurt. I never experienced words that hurt so much.
Others didn't recognize that I was in an abusive relationship. I didn't have any cuts or bruises, but I wish they could see my insides. My heart was so destroyed.
He tried to convince me that I wasn't attractive, that he was the only person that would ever be mildly attracted to me. Tried to tell me that nobody really liked me, that I just annoyed everybody, and people got tired of me being depressed all the time. He also tried to convince me that my anxiety attacks were just cries for attention, and that they weren't actually serious or real.
Well, a lot of times when people think of domestic violence, they think of physical violence, and that is something that happens. But abusive relationships aren't just physical. They're verbal, they're emotional, they're financial, they're spiritual, and I think that not all wounds are visible.
So verbal abuse sometimes is harder to recognize. A lot of outsiders don't see it because there's not any physical marks. There's nothing left physically to see on the victim. And so sometimes even the victim doesn't notice it. So the victim doesn't recognize like these names their partner is calling them every single day is just as hurtful, just as abusive.
It started off pretty chaotic. I first met Chris outside of the library at my community college. I didn't really acknowledge him or know him too well, but I was giving my number to one of my friends and he just threw his number out there. I didn't think too much of it, but I put it in my phone anyways. Figured maybe he'd be somebody new and cool to talk to. It was kind of whirlwind from that. He took me to an off-Broadway play for like our first date to go see Wicked, and I was shocked that he would buy such an expensive ticket for a girl he just met. But the play was nice. The relationship was alright as far as I knew. I didn't realize until later that it was kind of awful to look at on the outside.
Sometimes it's more difficult for that victim to recognize but also justify, like, I need to get out of this situation because it doesn't seem as dangerous. But I have so many victims tell me I would have much rather had the physical abuse, been punched, been hit, than withstood the verbal insults and verbal put downs that I experienced every single day, because they don't go away.
He convinced me that I was crazy, that my family was the cause of all my problems, is what he tried to convince me. And he would get upset that I wouldn't listen to what he was like trying to tell me to do. I wouldn't do the things he wanted me to do, like go where he wanted me to go, pick him up after I got off work at 11 to go take him to eat, and pay for it out of pocket since he didn't have a job and couldn't bother to get one himself. He met this girl, and immediately, I mean, there were red flags there with just the way he acted. So admittedly, I started to get a little jealous when he'd blow me off to go hang out with her. And after a while of that, things just kept going downhill. I didn't want to hang out with him anymore either, because that's about the same time that I started realizing the abuse, and I realized that he was a pretty awful person. And so So I didn't go around him much, and he would get upset over that. We finally broke up. It was a bit devastating because it was a really long relationship to lose.
Well, when a victim is in a relationship, to that abuser, that means they've lost power and control. That abuser no longer has power and control. So sometimes those abusers will do anything they can to keep that power and control and maintain it with that victim.
So when he wanted me to take him back, after he had already had a relationship with the other girl, one of his reasonings or ways to try and convince me to take him back was that she had more issues than you do, which I guess in his twisted mind was supposed to make me feel better about myself. Compared to my normal relationships, this one was pretty awful because he kept showing up and kept trying to come back and convince me to take him back.
That person knows how to push buttons with the person they're in a relationship with, and so trying to get back in, I think they're very sensitive at that point after they leave a relationship, and it's very tempting to go back to that, I think, because that's what they are familiar with.
And so they start doing some different things to basically keep their foot in the door with that victim, calling them repeatedly, stalking them on social media, checking up on them, showing up where that victim is. But they do need to notice and recognize the red flags that this is becoming a serious situation and there is some danger involved.
I, for some reason, invited him into my dorm, and he started crying and refused to leave until I said I would take him back, which I just wanted to get him out of the dorm. But it took 2 times to get him to stop doing that, and after the second time I just refused to allow him to contact me at all. I blocked him on Facebook. It was difficult at first. When I really began to notice that the relationship was abusive, I, strangely enough, started to feel a little bit better about myself because I started to realize that a lot of the things he said weren't true. That there were definitely people out there that liked me and that they weren't all annoyed with me. It definitely helped my self-esteem a little bit after I realized that he was abusive, and so it wasn't just me, which is what, with the help of him, I had convinced myself after a while there.
When victims get out of relationships, they have to go through a healing process. They have to cope with it's kind of like a death of a relationship that was very negative, but they're on this roller coaster of emotions, and they have to heal and cope with what's happened to them as far as the abuse, but also this relationship ending.
I found a therapist through the student health center that I went to for a couple of months after our relationship ended. We would meet about every 2 weeks and have hour-long sessions. I'm definitely a lot more self-confident now that I've realized I'm not crazy. A lot of those things weren't true. I've also realized that there are quite a few people who like me however what way I am, and I don't have to change for people. I started running right after our breakup, which has turned out to be really great for me, and I actually love running, so it makes me feel better about myself. Running through everything, pushing past the runner's wall, which is always those negative thoughts that pop back up.
So Stormy saw us in the Oval one day when we were focusing on Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and she didn't necessarily know who we were, and we told her what we were doing. We were raising awareness for domestic violence, and she started helping us put things around the Oval, not even being in the group.
I joined them unofficially last semester when they were putting up some flags in the oval, and decided to join them officially this semester.
We are a group of peer educators who do prevention and education on the topics of sexual assault, dating violence, domestic violence, stalking, and bystander behaviors. We do different presentations to freshman experience classes, ROTC, fraternities and sororities, and different student organizations, as well as we put on events on campus during the different awareness months.
We also like to provide options for students who are victims to get help.
She's been a very passionate group member. She's very understanding when we talk about victim blaming and what a victim goes through when leaving an abusive partner, and I feel like her knowledge of previous experience of what she's been through has really helped her be a wonderful addition to the group.
And I think that she brings up a lot of good points during our discussions in class of different things that we need to raise awareness on. She'll bring up different groups of people. Oh, we need to make sure we touch on this or touch on this. And I think that she is a good source of just knowledge in herself to bring to the group.
I think I've gotten a little bit more confidence since joining this organization. I'm a little bit more accepting of myself. I realize that some of the things that I was convinced of weren't true, and they were just causes of relationship abuse.